Hey guys, Mike the Cop, and welcome to part 2 of what it takes to be a good cop in a pretty bad world. Real quick, in the first video, I failed to mention actually one of the solutions to imbalance in our hormones and problems with injuries is that you need to go get checked out, right? Get some blood work done, get it reviewed by a physician. If you have nagging injuries, go get it dealt with so that you can take the steps necessary for recovery and balance and be at your best. Today's video is all about being mentally fit for the job. Stress resilience. Yes, you have to be physically fit, but maybe equally, if not more so important, is to have the mental resolve to do this job well. Let's do this. No one needs to see cops losing their shit because they're overstressed.
So the f you think you are? Worried about what I'm doing?
Honestly, guys, there are good stresses in life. When we hear the word stress, it automatically isn't a negative thing. There's good stresses like, fight or flight. That's a response in us that is good because it can help protect us. There's that fear and anxiety when you're gonna propose or when a big event is gonna happen. That's a good thing in your life. And those are technically stresses on your system, but they're not bad stresses. But I do want to talk about the key bad stresses that we see in law enforcement and some solutions to those things to help mitigate them and have a healthy, mentally fit approach to the job. First cause of mental stress in the job is repeated exposure to death and destruction, to just negativity in general.
This is fine.
Most people in their lives, when they call the police for death, a major traumatic incident, that may be the only time in their life they're experiencing something like that on that level. But for that officer, that may be the second time that day, that shift, that something like that has happened. And I'm not saying that there aren't other jobs out there. Listen, cops don't have, they're not special people per se, but they are unique. There is a unique set of circumstances and experiences that come along with being a police officer that set it apart from other professions, and that's all I'm saying. The point being is that you're not gonna have a stretch of a career as a police officer without being repeatedly exposed to very traumatic, negative things. Now, of course, someone in our society has to be responsible for dealing with these things, and it falls upon law enforcement and other first responders to do that, and that's okay. We're not going to be able to avoid this, but we need to be aware of it so that we can mitigate it properly. But we can't deny it either. We don't have to get all wishy-washy about it. We don't have to talk about, repressed memories and other things to be honest with it, that seeing death and destruction and negative situations over and over and over again is not ideal for the human experience, and therefore we need to be aware of it. And if we pretend like we're the tough guy who can handle that and never be bothered by it, never be affected by it, we're already off on the path to creating some negative responses to how we deal with that kind of stress. The second cause is hypervigilance. What happens is you have to be constantly aware. You're sort of like always on when you're a police officer.
Not blinking either.
If, say for example, you're in the military and you are deployed overseas. Well, now you're in that period of vigilance while you're on deployment. And obviously there's various degrees of stress there, and I don't have military experience. This is just coming from direct connections with people who have and who have seen combat. And so you have that period of vigilance. Well, when you're in a law enforcement career, I always liken it to this, is your law enforcement career is like one football field, and you're told your career is getting from one end zone to the other, and that there's only one landmine that is definitely going to explode if you step on it, but there's 1,000 that are inert. So just be careful. Good luck.
Good luck.
The odds of you blowing up are slim, 1 out of 1,000, right? But you're still now going to have to be hyper vigilant because you always have to be ready for the one. So the reality is that most people have no problem with police officers. Most police officers have no problem with people. Everybody gets along, but the reality is that we have to be ready for the one that doesn't, unless they mitigate it, right? I'm just talking about the causes. So hypervigilance is cause number 2. 3 is Political pressures.
But even Dr. King's assassination did not have the worldwide impact that George Floyd's death did.
Many of you may not have watched my video of why I stopped being a cop. And part of the contributing factor to that was just the changing political landscape in which most cops who are leaving the job now early or choosing a different career path, they're doing so because of the fact, not that there's bad guys out there, that 1 in 1,000 we talked about in hypervigilance, but it's the pressures internally coming from administration and politicians above them, driving a narrative and an agenda that is being pushed on you at the frontline level. And it just creates so much stress and anxiety from that angle that it's not worth for many people going through it anymore. The job is a noble job, but this political pressure is crazy increasing in our time. And that is something that we definitely have to be aware of and take into consideration and figure out ways, if I'm going to stay in this job, right? Like if that's you, if I'm going to do this job or I want to be a police officer, I want to make a difference, and you have that fire in the belly and you're going to do it, great, go do it. But you have to be aware of this pressure so that you can deal with it when it comes. Traditionally, in the law enforcement world and first responders, kind of broadly speaking, have dealt with these stresses in some pretty bad ways, and this is an ongoing problem. And this probably isn't just unique to law enforcement. It's anybody dealing with high levels of stress typically will turn to solutions that aren't going to create an answer. They're going to be like a mirage, and you think that they're going to help you, and they end up disappointing you, and you're still just left in the desert of anxiety and stress and worry. They are substances, whether legal or illegal substances, turning to those as a way to dull the pain or the stress.
What are you doing?
I'm not smoking crack.
Don't lie to me.
No, I am smoking crack.
They are screwed up relationships. You end up getting involved with people that tear you down and that become toxic. So these relationships you think that this person is going to rescue you from your stress, and really all they do is add to it. And lastly, stuff. Slave to overtime. You think, oh, if I only got the car that I wanted, I'll feel better. If I only got this boat, I would enjoy my weekends more. And we try to alleviate our stress with stuff, and it just will always fail to deliver.
It's gonna be 4 years at least before we can sail anywhere. And you could care less, admit it.
These are common ways that we deal with it that we need to forget about, that we need to say, yeah, that's not helping me. And many of you are gonna watch this and go, he is right. He's 100% right. I've tried to find satisfaction in these things, and it doesn't help. So if those are the bad solutions and we shouldn't be doing that, what are the good solutions? What are healthy ways to build resilience against stress and be mentally fit for the job? First good solution, if we're going to deal with the constant barrage of negativity and death and so forth that can create stress and anxiety in us, is we need to have a belief in something bigger than ourselves. We have to be able to have a framework of belief that goes beyond just a paycheck, so that we can properly put these things in perspective, and so that we can put ourselves in the narrative in healthy ways, and we can frame this in ways that aren't going to have a long lasting impact on us. Call for Backup, which is a nonprofit organization I help support, they did a survey, which this is not a Harvard study or anything like that, but in the survey, they found clearly that those who invested more time in their faith, and we didn't distinguish between Christianity or Judaism or any other faiths out there, it was simply, do you practice your faith, and at what level? And those who consistently practiced their faith or were engaged in their place of worship more often were way less stressed than those who did not. But you need to see things bigger than yourself and put yourself and others in the proper perspective so that you have a way to process the things that you'll see. Next solution is to decompress.
Oh my God, if you're wearing a dress, please keep your knees together. Nobody wants to see that. Oh.
Through fitness, which we talked about in the first video, and fun. Have some hobbies and a circle of friends that you can decompress with that have absolutely nothing to do with law enforcement. The only people they ever really hang around with are other first responders, and so you take the constant negativity there that they see at work and they carry it with them into those relationships, and it creates some pretty nasty cycles of never really seeing things from a positive perspective, seeing things outside that bubble, and understanding that they're taking on the experiences of other people, but in their own life, they don't have to live that death and destruction and negativity constantly in their own life. They're free to live a real life. So find hobbies and people to be around that expand your interests and help you live a normal life that doesn't have anything to do with work. Lastly, don't focus on what you can't control. This is a huge problem with cops because they arrest somebody and then they can't stand how admin dealt with them and gave them a lower bond. They can't stand how the judge at the court dealt with them. They can't believe this person got off. They carry these things with them, or they see situations at work that are beyond their control and they hold on to that as if they can. And you can't control what somebody else does. You can't control what admin does. You can't control what somebody on the street says to you, but you can control your response. Learning to give up the attempt at control for what you can't control anyway is hugely freeing. And I would recommend to you reading The Stoic Cop, Policing Through Stoic Virtues. I have read this book twice. You will relate to it, especially if you're a police officer, but if you haven't yet gone into the career and you have plans to do so, read this now. Begin to understand and implement these principles and practices now so that you can be free from trying to control stuff you can't. When you can do that, man, it lifts such a huge burden off of your shoulders when you stop trying to control people in situations that you can't anyway. You cannot control what happens to you very often, but you can control how you respond to it. Wrapping it up, guys, listen, stress is a huge problem in the first responder community. I mean, just in the law enforcement side alone, suicides usually more than double the line of duty deaths. We have a problem on our hands that we have to address. And it's like this silent elephant in the room that people don't like to talk about because suicide's difficult to talk about. But that's why Call for Backup exists. We are trying to tackle this problem head on through both peer-to-peer support, through education, and through conversations, and just making it less awkward to be honest about what's really going on, to actually help people deal with their stress in healthy ways. And so this video is just one piece of that puzzle of just putting out good information on what it takes to be a good cop in a bad world. And stress, being resilient to stress and being mentally fit is massively important in that equation. So I don't know, what else would you guys take away or add to this? Love to hear from you in the comments. Like the video if it meant something to you. Subscribe to whatever you're watching this on, and that helps tell whoever's hosting it that people want to hear more of the content. See you next time.